गणानां त्वा गणपतिगं हवामहे कविं कवीनां मुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पतान् शृण्वन्नोतिभिस्सेदसादनं प्रणो देवी सरस्वदेवाजेभिर्वाजिनेवते दीनामवित्रयवतो गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम। ओम साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्। ओम जयन्ती मंगलकाली भद्रकाली कपालिनी दुर्गा क्षमा शिवदात्री स्वाहा स्वदा नमोस्तुते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Sairam Lin, Sairam from Malaysia.
Sairam Sharma, Sairam from New Zealand. Thank you, Swami, for allowing Sharma and I to present another facet of your teachings. And welcome, as always, to our much valued listeners. Today's topic is Swami's handkerchief. And anyone who has watched videos of Swami giving darshan or seated in his chair will notice that he always had a folded white handkerchief to hand. And when he was giving darshan, people were always holding out handkerchiefs to him, hoping that he would take them. Especially after he created vibhuti, you would see several hands coming forward, offering him a clean handkerchief to wipe the vibhuti from his hand, and then he would return the handkerchief to the lucky giver. And we were always wanting one of his handkerchiefs. All of us thought it would be so special to have one of his handkerchiefs. Indeed, when I was called for my first interview, as I was rising from my seat after Swami had told me to go, meaning go with your group to interview room, as I was getting up, a long-time ashram resident who was sitting next to me pressed a clean white handkerchief into my hand that was embroidered with little orange flowers. And she said, Lynn, please give this to Swami and ask him to bless it. If I had a handkerchief that he had touched, I could endure anything. I could get through any kind of pain and suffering. This touched my heart so much. Of course, I took the handkerchief, even though I was in quite a hurry to get up there, because Mata Betty was already sailing past and giving me that look, come on, Lynn, get going. And I also had another devotee hanging onto my my left hand, and she had burst into tears. She later became my GP, my doctor, and I had to get her up and get her to stop crying and get into the interview room. But I held on to that handkerchief and held it out to Swami at an opportune time. He took it and smiled, held it in his hand for a few moments, and returned it to me. One of the beauties of the handkerchief, too, is that you will often see Swami touch it to his lips, and that is not because he was sweating or had too much saliva. His lips literally were exuding amrita, and I saw this close up. It was an extraordinary sight. In other times, he would indeed wipe his face with a handkerchief, of course, if it was really, really hot. But you never really saw Swami perspire. That was the most extraordinary thing. And of course, he always had this beautiful divine fragrance about him. He never, ever had the odor of perspiration or anything like that. But he's a divine being. And so any thoughts that you might have had about him being a person like you and I, he was very good at giving you that illusion, and that is indeed what it was. Now, what some people might not realize is that, in fact, Professor Kasturi once said, there are signs, a sign is enough for those who seek. And it was very common for all of us to watch Swami all the time to see if he would give us some kind of sign that he had us in mind, or he was thinking of us. It might be a look, or we might say in our prayer, Swami, please give me a sign that you are thinking of me, that you are hearing my prayer. And this is not something that just Sai devotees do. Lots of people do it, even if they are not on any spiritual path. They will look for a sign, a lucky sign, like like a bluebird, for example, a rainbow, finding a coin unexpectedly. But we looked at Swami for signs, and one of the signs that we used to watch for was the way he might use a handkerchief. Like, for example, if he took our handkerchief, or if we were thinking, Swami, if you make vibhuti, please look my way. We would do things like this. It was something that I don't think was showing doubt of us necessarily. It's just that we were always trying to see if Swami was thinking of us, and realizing that we were talking to him in our prayers, in our dreams, in our visions. And he would use things like a vehicle, and the handkerchief was certainly one of those. And all of his gestures and all of his poses formed a body of meaning, because he was often always making unusual signs with his hands and fingers, like he would be writing in the air, for example, or pointing, or making an uplifting movement. And all of these gestures were so graceful and so meaningful to all of us. We would try to think, what kind of mudra is he making? And look, he is using the handkerchief. He is never, ever without the handkerchief. Now, Swami's movements were so graceful and so tender. He would sit in front of us, and he would seem to be relaxed and had nothing to do but to give us the pleasure of looking at him. And in reality, he was concentrating on countless activities all at once, on levels and dimensions that we could not see with our physical eyes. The reality of Swami is magnificent beyond anything we can imagine. And with his handkerchief, he seemed to almost have what I would call a private sacred code, because he taught in many, many ways. And once you had that experience of watching him during darshan, he was never still. He was always moving. He was always using his hands or his handkerchief in some way to us relay messages. And that is one of the basic functions of divinity. If you look at any carving or representation of all the gods and goddesses in Hindu mythology, they have many hands with many different objects in them, and they can do so many things at once. And Swami's elegant use of the handkerchief taught me and many others how incredibly sacred he was. And I think, and many others, felt that the beautiful, gentle gestures that Swami made, even using the handkerchief, were part of the beauty of his darshan. And sometimes he would even pat his hair with the handkerchief, or pat his robe, or when he would very gracefully throw one of his handkerchiefs to a devotee, of course, they cherished that for the rest of their lives. Now, sometimes you would be mentally asking Swami a question, and you would watch to see, did he turn his head to the left or the right, for example? Or would he use his handkerchief? And he would use these gestures to respond to us. He could read all of our thoughts. And I can tell you many, many times I would be thinking in darshan, Swami, please, could you just do this or that? And he would do it. And this made darshan even more and more meaningful. All of us wanted communication from Swami. All of us wanted to have some little bit of attention. Now, he was virtually never seen without a white handkerchief. He always used to carry one. His attendants carried a supply of spares, and handkerchiefs were still today placed on the arms of any chair that he might sit in. And even devotees far away in other countries will do this and will put out a welcoming handkerchief for him. And he taught us about cloth. And handkerchiefs, of course, are made of cloth. And cloth is a profound symbol for creation. So the handkerchief is made of warp and woof threads woven together. You know, some go horizontal and some go vertical. And so two different threads are being used. And of course, both threads are really the same, but they serve interdependent functions as they make the cloth. And the threads are theoretically, they're separable, but they're never separated. If the threads were to be separated, there would be no more cloth. And this describes the Shiva Shakti function. The Divine Mother and Father are part of the unity of the divinity of one. There are two, but then there are one. And they are interwoven, just like the threads in the handkerchief. And indeed, the weaving of horizontal and vertical gives the impression of gleaming white light. And so to us, the cotton in the handkerchief was the white light or the ocean of milk. That's one aspect of the Parabrahman level that appears like, now listen to this, liquid diamonds in crackling energy. That describes Swami in his unseen form of pure light to a T. Liquid diamonds in crackling energy. So his white handkerchief stands for the basis of creation, the interweaving of Shiva and Shakti. God holds creation in the palm of his hand. He works with creation. He plays with creation. He watches over creation. And thus, Swami, with his handkerchief, he never had a handkerchief far away from him. He kept track of them. He made use of them. He held them in his hand, put them on the chairs of his arms, dropped them in his lap. And I saw him teach with a handkerchief. In one interview, he was holding a handkerchief tightly in his hands, and he was talking about our undue attachment to the things and people in the world. He said, it is so easy to drop that attachment. He said, you are holding onto it like this. And he bunched up his handkerchief tightly in his hand. He said, this is how you hold on to these fleeting attachments that you never want to lose. He said, it is so easy to just open your hand and let the handkerchief drop to the ground. But you want to pick it up again. You can't let go of it. You keep picking it up, and that is what keeps bringing you pain and sorrow. Look, it is so easy. And he would release the handkerchief again and let it drop to the floor. I hope you have enjoyed this small talk. And as I am still part of his Eternal Book Center, I cannot help but mention that there has just been released the most beautiful book. It is on Kindle and Amazon. It is by Dr. Sue Evans, and it is called SWAMI'S Handkerchief. If you go onto Kindle, you can read a free excerpt of the book. It is a work of great love by Dr. Sue, who has written a number of books about Swami, and I encourage you to just Google Dr. Sue Evans on Amazon or on Google and just peruse Swami's Handkerchief by Dr. Sue Evans. Om Shri Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Om तस्मात् कारुण्य भावेन रक्ष रक्ष साईश्वरा. हरि ओम तत्सत् श्री साईश्वरार्पणमस्तु. ओम शांति शांति शांति.